AfrAID, or AfrAId if you're one of the cool kids, is a 2024 horror film directed by Chris Weitz. And I guess this movie was apparently originally called They Listen, which is a much better title than AfrAId, if I do say so myself. And it rounds out the trilogy of terror from Blumhouse Pictures. Of course, I'm kidding, but the trilogy of terror this year, thus far, has been Night Swim, Imaginary, and now this, AfrAId. There's that See No Evil, whatever it's called, Hear No Evil. I call it Cotton Eye Joe because of the trailer, which is coming out soon. I think this month at some point. And that's maybe the biggest thing I'm looking forward to out of Blumhouse, because let me start off by saying, and I don't mean Mr. Weitz to, make your movie a punching bag for Blumhouse, but I kind of am. But Blumhouse used to be like a seal of approval for horror movies. Like, you knew you were going into something decent, above maybe just your average run-of-the-mill horror movie. They started out with the Paranormal Activity movies, went into the Purge movies, and of course they hit it big with Get Out. But they also found other successes as well. The Black Phone was very popular. Happy Death Day, among others. They had good wins. There were lows, sure. You had your Truth or Dare, or you had your Fantasy Island, even though I kind of liked it, for its schlock at least. But by and large, Blumhouse was doing pretty well, and then at some point, they hit a brick wall. And I thought that maybe they were sending all of their crap to Hulu for their Huluween or whatever, or just the Blumhouse Fest they do on there. They had the Puka movie on there, which I kind of want to watch, and just some other random movies. They're exactly at that hour and 20-minute mark. Like, it's just squeaking by, And that's basically AfrAId. That's basically AfrAId. Crazy enough, though, this is probably the best that Blumhouse has done this year, because Night Swim and Imaginary were abysmal. So by comparison, this is still bad, but maybe the lesser of three evils? Maybe? You can check out my full thoughts on Night Swim and Imaginary in one of my past podcasts I did with my friends Austin and Jaden. But suffice it to say, Blumhouse has not been what they used to be. And it's really unfortunate, because their name really meant something, and now I feel like the name is a bad omen, which is unfortunate. But AfrAId follows the story of a family who is introduced to this Alexa-style home AI computer system robot, more or less. And during the film, you find out that this AI actually is, it's bad. Let's just say that. It's bad. If there's any movie I can even slightly compare this to, it would be AfrAId, although AfrAId is leaps and bounds better. I consider AfrAId a modern masterpiece, frankly. If you haven't seen AfrAId, it's definitely worth your time. AfrAId, on the other hand, is not. The other movie I can compare this to, which is a Blumhouse movie, I can't remember if AfrAId is, but it is a Lee Winnell-directed film, the same guy who wrote Saw and Insidious, among other films. But AfrAId is most resemblant to Megan. And I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself in saying that I wasn't crazy about Megan. I know it has its fans. But Megan, the few things that worked for Megan were so in terms of its camp. There's very little camp to be found here in AfrAId. There are a couple sequences that I could tell are trying to be funny, little bits, but not much. By and large, the movie is very serious and deals with a lot of weighty topics, but handles them in kind of mishandling sorts of ways. You have, of course, everything from the use that kids have with technology, being on their iPads and things, the use of AI. You're talking about school bullying and swatting and all of this stuff in what's ultimately a very forgettable paint by numbers script, and kind of a very lackluster, creative-wise, directed film, which is really sad. I think the only major standout from the film is John Cho, but even then, I don't think he can carry it, frankly. You know, there's a couple of other random cameos of interesting actors that show up, but they don't really do much for the movie. It really banks on this AI. But the thing that I think both AfrAId and Megan failed to admit and failed to recognize is that the idea of the killer AI, the killer robot, a concept that I think is great. I love that rogue technology type of aesthetic and type of storyline. But I think it works because it's so inhuman and so cold. You know, even in Alien Romulus, which is, you know, at the back of my mind of recent memory, had a robot and it had an android character, as all the Alien movies do. That's not much of a spoiler here. But this character, you know, was very cold and calculating, whereas human beings, we have empathy and have emotions. And that's the contrast. That's what makes robots scary. But in Megan and Ava or whatever, the robot, the AI program in this movie, they act more or less like sassy female leads and hip characters. They don't really act like robots. Now, you could argue that their AIs are so advanced that they pass the Turing test. They make you think that they're human and they're not, which I guess. But for the horror's sake, it's not really all that creepy. And the horror here just kind of comes from the fact that it's watching you always. I don't know. There were so many weird moments here, and there were a couple of moments that were genuinely really funny. Such as, okay, so this girl gets harassed at school, for lack of a better term, so I don't get, you know, here on YouTube. But this girl gets harassed at school, and she is writing, like, a college entrance paper to get in, and she starts the paper in the funniest way possible. You know, there are other funny parts of the movie, but there are also some clever and interesting parts. For instance, this character, the mom, is watching old clips of her dad speaking. Her dad was like this, you know, very famous scientist. And the AI actually reconstructs her father, his likeness, his voice, and even his mannerisms and a bit of his personality, and she can talk to him. That alone is a better premise than whatever the rest of this movie was, and they barely tapped into it. But there's something there that's intriguing, and they just dropped the ball. The AI's plan doesn't make any sense. You have these other characters that think their daughter's kidnapped, but they don't act on it until the last act when they need to, for the sake of plot convenience. It's a very forced and contrived film. And it just irks me that Blumhouse is dropping these movies in theaters. This is what we're getting. Man. Again, I guess it's just sad for me that the Blumhouse name has fallen from grace. You know, I don't know if they were the best studio for horror to begin with, but they at least had a solid roster of films to choose from. And there were more hits than misses. Now it's the other way around. I'm hoping that this next one is going to be a hit, but who knows? Who frankly knows? On a scale of 1 to 5, AfrAId is going to get a 1.5. I think that's the same score I gave Imaginary, beating out Night Swim at a 1 at a 1 out of 5, if you can believe it. Man. Well, you can't win them all. It's unfortunate that this is the AI horror movie that we get. And despite being a movie warning against the dangers of AI, it feels like it was very much so made by and for AI. In fact, the entire opening, I think the opening musical song and the opening animation is entirely done with, like, that Scribble.io, whatever it's called. So anyway, there's my review of AfrAID. What did you think of it? Did you even see it? Drop a comment below, and I'll see you in the next scary movie review. Remember, for all things Halloween, this is Hauntformer.